Morning. Tonight, I'll be talking about the continuing story of the Irish that fought for the South during the American Civil War. Um, Sadly, uh, during the search of our databases for this week, no papers for the Confederacy were found by me, so the researcher had to reach beyond just the South, and the overall picture began to form while I was researching through the newspaper databases on how the Irish were treated not only in the Confederacy, but in the United States, and what the war actually meant to them after it was over. So, first, the Irish home front, for most Irish families in the South, they lived in squalor. Now, as I've said in the past, most Irish families lived in the cities. But for those that lived outside the cities, most of them lived in squalor, as most poor Southerners did at that time. They were destitute, and as the war continued and the tide against the South began to turn, approximately 1863, depending on which battle you care to decide, uh, their living conditions became much worse. Uh, in the battlefield states, Irish refugees would come into the South, the deeper South, and they would turn to their Irish families or friends or, well, just Irish looking for help. At first, the Irish families took in their own kind, no questions asked, no matter where they were from. But after a while, with so many refugees descending upon the Irish families in the South, the Irish of the South could no longer handle the influx. It eventually became so overwhelming, the numbers, that there was no more room. And so you have these refugees, as they would today, sleeping in abandoned businesses, abandoned workshops, abandoned schools. But they were just sleeping everywhere. And of course, you have the collapse of the Confederate dollar, along with the economy. So there was nothing to eat except for, according to the newspapers of the time, berries and nuts. There were no clothes or no new clothes except what came through the Confederate blockade by blockade runners. But through it all, the Irish took care of their own. In the North during this time, people began to realize that perhaps the Irish, due to all of the bloodshed or all the blood that they had spilled fighting for the Union, they were becoming more than just Irish. Sorry. It was said that the Irish presented an ancient race approaching the possibilities of its development. Now, what we have here is an article in a northern newspaper, um, coming to the conclusion that yes, the Irish are a primitive race, not quite up to our standards, but they are getting there. There was hope that the Irish were going from pond scum to real human beings, as Irish Americans imagine that. It was noted in the North that these people of high traditions, who have been enthralled for ages by the British, and who now have the freedoms inherent in their new home, the Union, are moving from the slums, moving forward into professions, becoming prominent in political circles, particularly New York and Boston, and perhaps most importantly, are acting as guides to the new wave of immigrants to the United States. Anthony Trollope, a member of the British House of Commons, after a visit to America in 1864, gave a speech in Parliament on the Irish in America, and of course on Americans in general. In his speech, he noted that the Irishmen were never fond of Britain, and perhaps less fond of Britain at that time, but are still a hospitable lot. It is well known that the British think of the Irish and Americans as loud, upstart, encroaching, boastful, and conceited. But he also said that the British should not hate the Irish and Americans for this, because we are much alike, except they can't call us upstarts. Finally, after American Civil War, the fight for bragging rights began in the North. And I mean, no offense, but white Anglo Saxon Protestants, heretofore known as WASP, held the field, so to speak, when the monuments began going up at places such as Gettysburg, Antietam, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville. Any unit that did not fit the heroic WASP mold was silently forgotten. Even after the war and the recognitions that the Irish had received from the battlefield and from many generals of the Union cause, they were being ignored. In fact, they were being written out of history and out of textbooks. It was not until 1911 when the Irish American Historical Society got recognition for the bravery of the Irish Brigade, particularly the 69th Regiment, and how they fought and died for the Union in front of Myers Heights at Fredericksburg. From that moment on, the Irish would be forgotten no more. Thank you.